This conference will now be recorded.
From today's session, we'll try to understand what is Ansible, what is the purpose of Ansible, and how we can use Ansible in DevOps methodology. Okay. So far we have discussed a lot of tools. Like initially, we started understanding about Linux commands, shell scripting. This is because in most of the cases, we will use Linux operating systems. So in real time, most of the cases we will use Linux operating system to operate and automate. We need Linux commands and shell scripting, right? Shell scripting to automate, to operate Linux systems. We need an, you know, learned about Linux and shell scripting. Later, we discussed about SCM tools like Git, GitHub, Bitbucket, etc. SCM, source code management, or version control systems. We call it as a version control system to maintain the source code, to maintain and distribute the source code among the teams. Later, we learned about the build tools like Maven. We have Gradle also as a build tool, etc. Then application servers like Tomcat, we have JBoss, etc. Then source code quality, source code quality management, SonarQube. We also have a web servers. We also have a web servers. Web servers come load balancers like Apache, HTTPD, Nginx, right? Then to check the quality of the code, static code analysis, we discussed about SonarQube. Later, CI/CD. We learned about Jenkins. Like similar to the Jenkins, we have a lot of other tools, right? Bamboo, GitLab, Travis CI, like Circle CI, there are etc. After that, we learned about containerization, how we can deploy our applications as a containers. Without containers also, without containerization also, we can deploy our applications. But we learned about how to deploy, how to build and deploy our applications as a containers, containerization softwares like Docker. We have a container D. We have a container D, RKT, Rocket, etc. Then we learned about container orchestration to manage those containers, to load balance, to scale those containers, to distribute the containers, We use container orchestration softwares like Docker Swarm and Kubernetes. And also similarly, you have a OpenShift, etc. So similarly, like we have a one more infrastructure as a code. Infrastructure as a code. Infrastructure as a code. Infrastructure as a code. Terraform. We learned about Terraform. Right? Now, build and deployment as a code. Build and deployment as a code. Can we, like this Jenkins pipelines, can I call that as a build and deployment as a code? Whatever pipeline scripts we are writing, can we call that as a build and deployment as a code? Using pipelines, using build and using Jenkins pipelines, we are doing the build and deployment. Like this, we have a build and deployment as a code. Infrastructure as a code. Now, this Ansible falls under one more category called configuration management. Configuration management. Configurations as a code. Configurations as a code. Configuration management. Ansible is a configuration management tool. What do you mean by configuration? So what is configuration? What do we mean by configuration? Configuration can be anything, any task, like creating users, groups, etc. Like or installing software package, installing or upgrading or removing software packages, or starting or stop or restart the services, or like copying or deleting files, etc. Anything. Or it can be deploying an application also. So anything. Configuration can be any task. Configuration can be any task like creating a users, creating a groups, installing or upgrading the softwares, removing the softwares, starting, stopping the services, like this, right? Configuration. So configuration management. So under configuration management, we have a lot of tools like Ansible. The popular configuration management tool is Ansible. Like similarly, like Ansible, you have a Chef, you have a Puppet, you have a Salt Stack, etc. All are configuration management tools. Out of this, Ansible is a popular configuration management tool. So far, how we have done the configurations, guys? Suppose if I just have a servers, can I deploy the applications without configuring those servers? If I just have an infrastructure, if I just created an infrastructure without configuring that servers, can we have our applications hosted? Do we need to configure The servers like installing some softwares, creating a users, groups, etc. in the servers. So far, how we have done the configurations? Like how did you install, right? Manually. Manually, we have done the configurations. Suppose if I have a lot of servers, if I have hundreds of servers, I have hundreds of servers, whether the servers in on-prem data center, whether the servers are in cloud, that doesn't matter. If I have hundreds of servers, right, those servers needs to be configured. Will it take, more time? Like if I have to do it manually, and also manual will be error prone. Manually creating or manually configuring can be led to the errors, right? If you miss some step, some configuration, it may cause the issues, right? So for that category, for that purpose, we have a configuration management of softwares, configurations as a code. So Ansible is one of the configuration management software. So let's consider this scenario. I have a lot of servers. In my project, I want to manage lot of servers. I have a lot of servers. I have different servers. Like I have maybe Jenkins servers, I have Nexus server, I have SonarQube server, I have application server like Tomcat, and I have a database servers, or I may have a Docker servers or Kubernetes servers. Just to give an example, I have hundreds of servers. So I want to install some softwares, or I want to do some patches. I want to do some upgrades, right? So far, how we used to do? Like we used to manually SSH to these servers. We used to manually connect to these servers, and we were executing required commands, required instructions in these servers. Now, this can be automated. This can be automated using configuration management softwares like Ansible. So Ansible using configuration management tools, right? This configuration management tool we can install in one server. That server can programmatically do the configurations in these servers. So Ansible is an open source configuration management tool. It's an open source configuration management tool and a deployment tool. We can use Ansible to do the deployments also if required. Using Ansible, we can do the deployments also if required. The main components of Ansible are playbooks. We will call that configuration scripts. That scripts as a playbooks in the Ansible. Ansible uses playbooks. That playbook is nothing but a configuration script, what you want to do in those servers. Ansible uses playbooks to do the configurations in the servers, in those servers. Ansible is written in Python language, guys. Ansible is written in a Python language. Ansible is developed in a Python language. Does it mean, do we need to learn Python to write Ansible configurations, Ansible playbooks? Ansible is written in Python. Does it mean do we need to learn Python to write the Ansible playbooks? Not required. Ansible scripts is in the form of YML files. Ansible scripts, that Ansible playbooks will be in the form of YML files, right? But that YML file, basically that will be internally a Python script. So Ansible manages or Ansible configure machines in an agentless manner using SSH. Ansible configures or Ansible manages machines in an agentless manner using SSH. Built on top of Python, built on top of Python functionality. So we will get a lot of Python functionality. The configurations are basically YML based playbooks. That configuration we can do in the form of YML playbooks. So Ansible uses SSH to securely connect and configure those machines. Ansible follows push-based architecture for sending the configurations. Ansible follows push-based architecture for sending the configurations. Okay. Basically, there are two types of configuration management tools. There are two types of configuration management tools. One is pull-based and another one is push-based. Another one is push-based. So when it comes to pull-based, you need an agent. You need an agent software in each and every machine. If you want to configure that machine using that configuration management tools, in case of pull-based, you need an agent software in each and every node which you want to configure. So in case of pull-based, you need an agent software here. In each and every machine, you need an agent. Here you have a configuration scripts. Where you have a scripts, your configuration scripts, right? So in case of pull-based, you need an agent in each and every node. I mean to say every machine, every server to configure. If you want to configure this server, if you want to configure this server using configuration management, if you are using pull-based configuration softwares, you need an agent. So this agent will take the configurations from this server. This agent will take the configurations from this server. Then it will do the configuration. It will execute those scripts, configuration scripts. In case of pull-based, this is pull-based. Like you have chef, like you have a chef, puppet. These are like a pull-based configuration management software. These are like a pull-based configuration management software. In each and every server, you need an agent of that chef agent or puppet agent to pull the configurations. When it comes to Ansible, it is push-based configuration. Agentless configuration management tool. When it comes to Ansible, It's an agentless configuration management tool. It's a push based, which means you don't need any agent. You don't need any agent in these servers. In your actual servers, whatever you want to configure. You don't need any agent in your target machines, your actual machines. So Ansible manages or Ansible configure the machines in a agentless manner using how it will send the configurations. What it does, it will programmatically do the SSH. It will use SSH connections. This server, I mean to say this Ansible machine, will configure these machines using SSH. Something like this. So we don't need an agent. You don't need an agent in this server. This server only will push the configurations using SSH. It will programmatically connect to this server using SSH, and it will execute those configuration scripts. Ansible is a push-based configuration management tool. Ansible is push-based. The central server, which means this Ansible server, will push the configuration to the target servers. Right? We can control when the changes are made in the servers. So what Ansible can do, as I told already, what Ansible can do, using Ansible we can do the configurations. We can install required softwares. Suppose I want to install Tomcat, or I want to install Jenkins, or I want to install some software like Java. Using Ansible, I can configure the machines, or I can create a users. If I want to copy the files, I can copy the files. I can stop the service. I can start the service using Ansible. And also Ansible can be used as a deployment purpose also. What does it mean? Deployment. Let's consider I have normal Tomcat servers. Let's consider I have a normal Tomcat servers. I want to deploy that WAR file in multiple servers. I want to deploy that WAR file in multiple servers. Maybe I have a Jenkins. I have a Jenkins server. I have a WAR file. I have a WAR file. This WAR file I want to deploy in multiple servers, multiple Tomcat servers. Using Jenkins, maybe I can have that, publish over SSH or SCP. I can execute into multiple servers. I can copy that file using SCP or, publish over SSH, that plugin. I can execute multiple times. But instead of that, what I can do, I can write an Ansible playbook. I can write an Ansible playbook. I can write an Ansible playbook. Maybe I can install Ansible in the same server in the Jenkins itself. I can install Ansible in the same server. I will write a playbook. If I just execute that command, Ansible command, it will copy to all these servers. It will copy your WAR file to all these servers. And also, if required, I can use Ansible to install Tomcat also. Or I can use Ansible just for a deployment purpose also. I'll write some playbook which will copy that WAR file to all these servers. We can use Ansible as a deployment tool also, if required. We can do the configurations using Ansible. We can do the deployments using Ansible if required. Right? So before installing Ansible, before installing and before using Ansible, let's try to understand the Ansible architecture. Architecture is very, very important. Before learning any tool, first we need to understand the architecture, how it has been designed, how it will work, what are the components in that software. So we need to understand the architecture. So before installing Ansible, let's try to understand Ansible architecture. So let's try to understand Ansible architecture. So here in this diagram, these are the components of your Ansible software. These are the components of your Ansible software. And what are these? Like here, host 1, host 2, host 3, like this we have a host n. What are these? Host 1, host 2, host 3. Like these are your actual servers. Those are your servers, your machines. That can be any machine. That can be a database server, that can be application server, that can be a Jenkins server, or that can be any other server. So using Ansible, we can configure these machines. Right? So all these components are part of your Ansible machine. The moment you install Ansible, Ansible has this concept. Ansible has a host inventory, Ansible has a playbooks, Ansible has a core modules, custom modules, connection plugins, all these softwares, all these components. So I can install Ansible. I can install Ansible in any server. I mean to say that can be a public cloud or that can be a private cloud server. I can install Ansible in on-premise servers, or I can install Ansible in AWS or cloud servers. In any server, I can install Ansible. But again, when it comes to interview perspective also, they'll ask this question. Can we install Ansible in Windows? In Windows OS? So, no, we cannot install Ansible in Windows OS, Windows operating system. But we can configure Windows machine using Ansible. What does it mean? This Ansible software, I cannot install Ansible software in Windows machine, which means this Ansible machine cannot be a Windows machine. But using this Ansible, can I configure Windows machine? If I have some Windows machine, suppose let's consider I have one Windows server, right? So using Ansible, I can configure Windows server, but Ansible cannot be installed in Windows. So which means Ansible can be installed only in what operating system? Ansible can be installed only in the Linux operating system. That Ansible can be installed in any infrastructure. That Ansible can be installed in on-premise data center servers. You can configure your on-premise servers using Ansible, or you can configure your cloud servers using Ansible. Right? Ansible can be installed in any infrastructure. The moment you install Ansible, these are the components in Ansible machine. So here, the moment you install Ansible, this has lot of components. Like you have host inventory. You have a host inventory in Ansible and playbooks. Playbooks. These are the concepts or components of Ansible. You have a host inventory, you have a playbook, and you have a core modules. Ansible core modules, Ansible modules. And you have a custom modules. You have a custom modules. And you have a connection plugins. That Ansible has all these components. Connection plugins. Like SSH, WinRM, connection plugins. Right? So all are part of this Ansible architecture. So in the moment I install Ansible, right here, in this Ansible, you have these components, concept, host inventory, playbook, core modules, custom modules, connection plugins. Right? So what is host inventory? What is host inventory? This is interview question also. What is host inventory in Ansible? What is host inventory in Ansible? The name itself is saying host inventory. So Ansible is configuring the machines in a agentless manner. So you don't have any agent here. So in that case, how does Ansible knows what machine it has to configure? I have hundreds of servers. I have thousands of servers. How does Ansible knows which machine it has to configure? Do we need to provide host details? I mean to say the server details somewhere to the Ansible, which server it has to configure. And again, Ansible is using agentless. It is using SSH connections. So in that case, does Ansible should know the details to SSH? Like if you want to SSH, do we need to know like IP address or host name of the server, username and password, or username and passwordless, right? So Ansible will programmatically in the background, it will SSH to these servers and it will do the configurations. So in that case, does Ansible should know somehow what servers it has to configure, what is the IP address or host name, what is the username to connect to that server. So where do we maintain that information for Ansible? In Ansible, in a host inventory. There is a file, there is a concept called host inventory. So host inventory, what is inventory? In accounting terminology, in accounts, finance, inventory is basically stock. It's a stock details, right? So similarly, host inventory is nothing but it's a information or inventory of all these servers, right? So Ansible uses host inventory to connect to these servers. Ansible uses host inventory to connect to the your target servers, your actual servers. Again, there are two types of inventories, guys. It's a inventory, basically information about host machines. So Ansible uses host inventory to connect to configure the servers. Ansible uses this host inventory to connect to the servers. And there are again two types of inventories. Very important. Static inventory. Interview questions also, all these things. Static inventory and dynamic inventory. What is static inventory? What is dynamic inventory? Static inventory, it's a file, it's a static file. It's a static file, it's a file in which we will list and group the servers. Details. It's a static file. It's a static file in which we will list the server details, or we will list and group the server details. The default location of this static inventory is etc/ansible/hosts. This is the file name. Hosts is the file name. It is part of this directory in this machine. In this machine, the moment you install Ansible, right? If you are using static inventory, it's a file. The default location is this one. In this file, we are going to list. We are going to group the server details. We are going to list and group these server details, IP address, all those stuff. So this is a static inventory, which means whenever I add some servers in my project, whenever I add my some servers in my project, or whenever I terminate, whenever I terminate some servers in my project, and those servers I need to manage, those servers I need to configure using Ansible. In that case, do I need to modify my inventory file manually? Suppose I added one more server in my project and I want to configure this server also using Ansible. In that case, do I need to update the server details in the host inventory file, static inventory file? I'm adding some server. I want to configure this server also using Ansible. I want to configure this server also using Ansible. And if I am using static inventory, do I need to statically update or remove that server details in the host inventory, static inventory? Yes, right? So this is static. And what is dynamic? Dynamic inventory. So there is a one more type of inventory called dynamic inventory. It's a script. It's a script. It's a script. It can be Python script or it can be shell script. Right? It's a script which will fetch hosts, basically servers details dynamically. Dynamically in the sense programmatically. From external sources like AWS or Azure or databases, etc. So it's a script, it's a code, it's a script. Dynamic inventory is nothing but a script which will fetch the server details directly from the external sources like AWS. Suppose you are using AWS. You are using AWS in your project, right? So you have your servers in the AWS. If you want to configure those servers using Ansible, right? If you want to configure those servers using Ansible, you can use dynamic inventory, which will fetch the server details directly from the AWS, like how many servers you have in your AWS. It's a script. It's a Python script. Using that Python script, we can fetch the server details dynamically from external sources like AWS or Azure or some databases, or you can maintain all your server details in the database. It can directly fetch from the database or directly from AWS. If I am using dynamic inventory, whenever I create a server in AWS, whenever I terminate that server in AWS also, I no need to manually change anything because programmatically I'm getting the server details. So dynamic inventory is nothing but a script which will fetch the server details programmatically, directly. So whenever there is a change in my servers, I mean to say whenever I added some new servers, whenever I deleted some servers, do I need to modify my host inventory if I am using dynamic inventory? If I'm using dynamic inventory, do I need to modify my host inventory whenever I add some new servers? Whenever I terminate some servers, do I need to manually make the entries? Not required because it's dynamically fetching. So we have two types of inventory: static inventory and dynamic inventory. So when you know which one we should use, in which use case, when I should go for a dynamic inventory, when I should go for a static inventory, when I should go for a static inventory, when we will go for a dynamic inventory, right? This is nothing to do with the Terraform, guys. This is nothing to do with Terraform. Terraform is different. Ansible is different. We are using Terraform for what? We are using Terraform for creating the servers, infrastructure as a code. If you want to configure that infrastructure, if I want to configure that infrastructure, then can I go for a configuration management tools? I created an infrastructure using Terraform, but if I want to configure that infrastructure, can I use Ansible? Yes. And whether you use static inventory, dynamic inventory, that doesn't matter when you created a servers using Terraform or whatever it is, right? So you can manually list all the servers, whatever you have in the AWS, whether you have created using Terraform or manually using static inventory, you can list, or you can use a dynamic inventory, which you can fetch dynamically. So when we can go for a static inventory, when we have a fixed number of servers and you are not very frequently creating new servers and you are not frequently terminating the servers, you have a fixed number of servers and you are not very frequently creating servers, very frequently you are terminating the servers, then can I go for a static inventory? Yes. You no need to have an effort, you no need to spend an effort writing the dynamic inventory script. If you have a fixed number of servers and you are not very frequently adding the servers and terminating the servers. But if your infrastructure is so dynamic, I am creating lot of servers very frequently and I am terminating those servers. If I want to configure those kind of a servers, can I use dynamic inventory so that I no need to change entries in the host inventory manually. Yes. Right. So you have two types of inventory, static and dynamic. So static inventory is a file. Where is the default location in Ansible? That file, this one, etc/ansible/hosts. Then what is this playbook? Ansible, in Ansible we have a playbook. What is this playbook? This playbook is nothing but your script, your configuration script, your what you want to do in these servers. Whatever configurations you want to do in these servers, those configurations we will write in the form of what? Whatever you want to do in these servers, those configurations you will write in the form of playbooks. So playbook is in a YML format. Playbook is in a YML format. Playbooks. It's a configuration script which will be executed on hosts. Playbook will have a tasks. Playbook will have a tasks. What task you want to perform. Example, something like this. It is in the form of YML. Just to give an example, install git. You can write tasks in the playbook, something like this. Based on your requirement, whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do, based on your requirement, you'll write a playbook. Suppose I want to copy some file, just to give an example. Somewhere I want to copy. So playbook is a configuration script which you want to execute in the host machines. Playbook will have a tasks, something like this. So this is one task. This is one tasks, right? These tasks will be executed in all the machines. What is the meaning of all the machines here? Suppose if I have something like this, all, what is the meaning of all here? All the machines which are part of, all the machines which are part of where? All the machines which are part of inventory, right? So whatever machines you have in the inventory, so in all those machines, these tasks will be executed if I execute this playbook, right? So playbook is nothing but a script. Your configuration as a script, your configuration as a code, right? Ansible uses these playbooks. Ansible execute these playbooks in your host machines. Just give me a minute, guys. 1 minute, I'll be back. Okay, guys, I'm back. We'll continue. So this playbook is nothing but a tasks. Whatever you want to perform, whatever task you want to perform on these machines, right? You will write in the form of playbook, right? So playbook will have a tasks. These tasks will be executed against whatever host you want to execute. So now here, what is this, right? Here I am using something in the task, right? To write a task. What are these? What are these basically? Using what we are writing a playbook? What is this? What is this basically? These are basically Ansible modules. Ansible modules. So Ansible has a lot of modules. Ansible has a lot of modules, core modules. Ansible comes with hundreds of modules, thousands of modules. So that module is nothing but in the background, it's a Python script. That module is nothing but in the background, it's a Python script. Ansible comes with hundreds of modules, thousands of modules, predefined modules. So we are using these modules to write, the playbooks, right? Core modules that comes with Ansible itself, hundreds of modules, thousands of modules you have. So what is custom module? What is custom module? The custom module, right? Which we are writing our own on our own. Suppose you are not, you don't have any module, core module to meet your functionality. You can write your own module, custom module. But if you want to write a custom module, we should know Python. You should know Python. If you want to write a custom module in Ansible, you should know Python, because the Ansible in the background, that module is nothing but a Python script, right? If you want to write a custom module, you should know Python. But 99% you no need to write a custom module, because Ansible comes with thousands of modules, core modules. So you have a connection plugins. What is this connection plugins? For what purpose Ansible will use these connection plugins? Like connection plugins like SSH or WinRM. So these are connection plugins. Ansible will use these connection plugins to connect to the host machines. Ansible will use host inventory to connect to the machines. With the help of connection plugins, it will connect, and Ansible will execute the playbooks. And playbook will use modules. In playbook, we are going to use the modules. So this is Ansible architecture. Now let's try to install. Let's try to install Ansible. Let's try to install Ansible, and let's try to practice Ansible now. For practicing Ansible, for demonstrating Ansible how it works, I am going to take total 3 machines. I'm going to take total 3 machines. One machine for installing Ansible. This is configuration management server. In one server, I'll install Ansible. So these other servers, normal servers. These servers can be any server. You can install whatever you want to install. You can install whatever you want to install in this server. These machines, we call it as a host machines or target machines, etc. So in one machine, I'll install Ansible. I'll take 2 more machines just to install something, just to configure something using Ansible. This machine can be any machine. This can be your application server. This can be your database server, or this can be Docker server or Kubernetes server. I'm just taking 2 machines. If I have 2 machines, or if I have hundreds of machines, does Ansible concept will change? Whatever I have explained, like host inventory, playbooks. Does the concept will change? No, right? So I'm just taking two machines to demonstrate Ansible. Total three machines, one machine to install Ansible, two more machines to configure the softwares using Ansible. So since I'm using AWS, I'm creating a servers in AWS. But if you don't have, if your project is not using AWS, your project is using on-premise infrastructure, can I install Ansible? Can I configure my on-premise servers using Ansible again? Or I can install Ansible only in the cloud? Can I configure my on-premise servers also if I'm not at all using cloud, using Ansible? Can I do the configurations of my on-prem servers using Ansible? Yes, you can do that, right? Ansible can be installed in any infrastructure, whether it's a private cloud or whether it's a public cloud. You can install Ansible in anywhere. Since I am using AWS, so I am creating a servers in the AWS. So now total I am creating 3 servers. And again guys, using Ansible, can I configure irrespective of the operating system? If I am using Ubuntu operating system, or if I am using Windows operating system, or if I am using any other operating system, will I able to configure that server irrespective of the operating system which is running? Yes, you can do that, right? You can do that. You can do the configurations in any operating system irrespective of the underlying operating system. So now I am taking total 3 servers. I am taking this Red Hat server. So total I am taking 3 servers just for practicing purpose. Why I am taking 3 servers? Again I am saying one server to install Ansible, one server to install Ansible, one server to install Ansible, other 2 servers as actual machines. Actual machines. So I am totally taking 3 servers just for a practicing purpose. Ansible uses SSH connections. So which port needs to be opened in the security group? Because Ansible will connect to these machines in a agentless manner using SSH. If port 22 is not opened in these machines, will Ansible will be able to execute the playbooks in these machines? No. So let me, port 22 is opened. Port 22 is open. Let me create the servers. I'm creating total just 3 servers. I'm manually creating, but if required, can I create these servers using infrastructure as a code using Terraform? If required, can I create these servers infrastructure as a code Terraform, right? So Terraform is an infrastructure as a code, but Ansible is used for what purpose? Ansible is used for configuring those servers, configuration purpose. So I have total 3 servers. Just let me use this one for Ansible purpose. Other 2 machines are normal servers. Other 2 machines are normal servers. I'm just giving something like this. This can be a Tomcat server, or this can be a Docker server. This can be a Jenkins, whatever it is. I'm just giving something like this. These are your host, actual servers. I'm just labeling something like this, but you can, if you want to label with any label, you can do that. This machine I will use for Ansible purpose, right? So using this machine, can I configure any machine? Like if I want to do something in this machine, or if I want to do something in this machine, can I use Ansible? We can use Ansible to configure any server. Now, first, let me install Ansible in this machine. Let me install Ansible in that machine. Guys, I have given the installation instructions here. I have given the installation instruction here. So, create Ansible user in all the machines. So, as per this installation instructions, I told create Ansible user in all the machines. But again, is it mandatory to create Ansible user in all the machines, or it's a best practice? It's just a best practice. Ansible can be installed in any user. Ansible can be installed as any user, and Ansible also can connect to your host machine as any user, whatever user is available. Now, since I have AWS Red Hat instances, what is the default user I get in all these servers? What is the default user I have? We have a EC2. What is the default user? EC2 user. Now, if required, can I install Ansible as a EC2 user in this machine? In this machine, yes. And this Ansible machine, will it able to connect to this machine as a EC2 user if I provide these user details in the host inventory, as a which user it has to connect? So any user is fine, but as for the best practice, what I said, create an Ansible user in all the machines, right? It is not mandatory. It is not mandatory. But at least I'll create a Ansible user in this machine, and I'll install Ansible as a Ansible user in this machine. At least in this machine, we will create an Ansible user, and we will install Ansible as a Ansible user in this machine. So let me connect to that machine. Let me connect to this machine. Let me connect to this machine. Now, if required, I can install Ansible as a EC2 user also in this machine. But as for the best practice, what I am doing, I am creating an Ansible user in this machine. As an Ansible user, I will install Ansible in this machine. So what is the command to add a user, right? I'm creating a user, Ansible user, and also I'm setting a password for this Ansible user, because this is custom user. This is custom user. So will I able to connect to this machine as a Ansible user using PEM file? Because does this user has been created with a PEM file? No, right? So I'm creating a password, sudo passwd Ansible. I'm setting the password for Ansible user. Give whatever password you want to give. Then you give the sudoers access. You give the sudoers access to this user. Make an entry in the sudoers file for Ansible user. Make an entry in the sudoers file. For this Ansible user, I am giving a sudo access, sudo permissions. If I don't give a sudo access to this user, can I execute some commands with sudo permissions? As an Ansible user, if I want to execute something which doesn't have a permissions, in that case, can I use sudo if I don't made an entry in the sudoers file? If I don't made an entry in the sudoers file, can I use sudo access? No, right? So that's why I'm making entry in the sudoers file. Now, by default, in AWS, password-based authentication is disabled. By default, in AWS EC2 instances, password-based authentication is disabled. Now, if required, will I able to SSH to this machine as an Ansible user using password if password-based authentication is disabled? No. So, where can I make the necessary changes if I want to enable password-based authentication? In which file we can make the changes, necessary changes to make the password-based authentication enabled? You have a SSHD config file, right? So etc ssh, and you have a sshd config file. In the etc folder, you have a sshd config file. So let's make an entry here. So here, password-based authentication. Password-based authentication. The value is yes, but this is commented, which means it is disabled. As of now, what is the value of password-based authentication? No. So let me uncomment this one. Let me comment this one. Let me comment this one. Let me uncomment this one. I want to enable the password-based authentication. Now I will save this. To reflect these changes, do I need to restart SSHD service to reflect these changes? Right? So we will restart sudo service SSHD restart. Now I have created an Ansible user. I created a password for Ansible user. Now if required, can I connect to this machine as an Ansible user using that password? Yes. Since I already logged in, can I switch? Instead of SSHing, can I switch? Since I already logged in, can I switch something like this? Right? Let me switch. Now I am into this machine as a which user? I am into this machine as a which user? Ansible user. Now I will install Ansible. So I created an Ansible user. I set the password. I have given the sudo access. I have enabled the password based authentication. Now in that Ansible machine, I switch to Ansible user. So what is the prerequisite to install Ansible? As I told, Ansible is written in which programmatic language? Python. So before installing Ansible, do we need to install Python in that server? Before installing Ansible, do we need to install Python in that server? Yes. So do I have a Python already in this machine? Do you see Python is there? No. We will install Python, something like this. And also Ansible also can be installed in different ways. Ansible can be installed using Linux package managers or Python package manager. Ansible also can be installed in different ways. Ansible can be installed using Linux package manager like yum, apt, right? Or Ansible can be installed using Python package manager. As per this documentation, what I am trying to do, Ansible is installed using which one? If you see, first I installed Python, then I am installing this Python pip. What is Python pip? What is Python pip? What is pip? First of all, it's a Python package manager. It's a Python package manager. Pip is a Python package manager. So Ansible is a Python package. Ansible is a Python package. So using pip, I can install Ansible. Pip is a Python package manager. So what I am doing, I am installing pip. So using pip, what I can do, if you understand this command, first I installed pip. Using pip, what I am trying to do here, using pip I am installing Ansible. So this hyphen user stands for current user. Only for current user I am installing Ansible. So what is my current user? What is my current user? Ansible. So Ansible we will be installing as a Ansible user. So I can install this way. I can install Ansible using pip Python package manager. But if you install Ansible using pip Python package manager, you will not get that default file, that host inventory default file, right? You will not get that default file. We need to manually create that file, etc Ansible host, the default file with the default content. If you are using pip Python package manager, you need to manually create this configuration file. This ansible.cfg file is like a settings file for Ansible. So you can take the default content from this URL, whatever URL I have provided. You just take this content and create this file, and you take this content, you create this file. If you are using pip Python package manager, instead of Python package manager, if required, can I use Linux package managers like yum, apt? If I am installing Ansible in Ubuntu, can I use apt? If I am installing Ansible using Red Hat in Red Hat, I can use Linux package managers like yum, apt and all, right? So whatever way you want to install, you can install Ansible in that machine. Now let me show you. I can install in this way also. I can install in this way also, using yum package manager, something like this. So first I will update the package manager. I'll add the repository where I have a Ansible. So I can do this way also. I'll add the repository where it has a Python, where it has an Ansible package. So I can just execute something like this. Just these two commands, yum install Ansible. Since Ansible is, depends on Python, so this command, if I just execute this command internally, it will install Python also. I no need to explicitly install Python, right? So I can just add a package manager, that repo list where we have an Ansible package. Then using this command, I can install Ansible. So if I install this way, this file will be created by default with default content. I no need to manually create these two files. If I use this way, using Linux package manager, or you can install using this Python package manager, pip, whatever way I have listed here. Whatever way you want to follow, you can follow, right? So let me use this one. I'm just adding this repository. This repository has that Ansible RPM file, RPM package. Without adding this repository, If I just execute yum install Ansible, will it work? No, right? So I'm just adding this repository, then I'm installing this, I'm executing this command. Yum install Ansible. Now internally it is installing Python, Ansible, all those softwares. Now if you see, it is installing required softwares for Ansible. It is installing Python and also some other Python libraries and Ansible software. Now, if you verify Ansible, now do you see Ansible is installed in this machine? What version of Ansible is installed? Ansible 2.9.25. And also Python is also installed. So Python 3, right? If you see, Python is also installed. Python is also installed. You can point this also to the Python 3 by setting the alternatives, Linux alternatives. You know how to set the alternatives, right? So even though I am just saying Python, it has to point to Python 3. So that can be done by executing this command, alternatives. So even though you use Python, it will be point to this one, right? You can execute this command. Now, even though I am referring Python, it is pointing to that Python 3. So we have a Python, we have an Ansible. Now I have installed Ansible in this machine. I have installed Ansible in this machine. Now, if I want to do some configurations in this server, suppose I want to copy some file to these servers using Ansible, or I want to install some software in these servers using Ansible. What needs to be done first, guys? Do I need to make an entry in the inventory file? Because Ansible has to know what servers it has to configure. Without having an inventory, if I execute a playbook, does Ansible knows where to install or where to execute that script? So we need to make an entry. So what is the default location of static inventory? What is the location of the default location of the static inventory file? So we have a etc/ansible/hosts, this file. But as a Ansible user, I may not able to edit this one. I may need to use sudo. I may need to use sudo vi instead of normal vi, or I can change the ownership of this directory. I can change the ownership of this directory to the Ansible so that it can modify. So I am using sudo now. Now this contains everything is commented, guys. Everything is commented in this machine. This is just a standard guidelines. This is just a standard guidelines. Everything is commented. So they have given how to write the inventory file. So comments should begin with what character if you want to comment something in the inventory file, host inventory file. Comment should begin with what character? Hash. So does it mean is everything is commented in this file? This is the default content. Do you see everything is commented in this file? Yes. Blank lines are ignored. Blank lines are ignored. You can enter either host name or IP address. Now here, I am going to list my server details. Something like this. I'm just going to list my server details. Wherever you want to list, you can list. So can I use IP address or can I use host name? Again, you can use either IP address or host name. And again, since this Ansible machine and your actual machines are in same VPC, same network, can I use private IP instead of public IP? Do I really need an internet? Do I really need a public IP if this Ansible machine has to connect to this machine and do the configurations? Do I really need a public IP? Not required, right? So I'll use the private IPs. I'm taking the private IP of this server. And also I'll take the private IP of this server. So here I have listed my servers. I just want to test the connectivity, whether Ansible will be able to connect to it or not. I am not going to do any configuration. I am not going to install any software in these two machines. First, I'll test the connectivity, whether Ansible will be able to connect to these servers or not. SSH. Now, what command I can use, right? I can use Ansible all -m ping. -m stands for module. Ping is one module in Ansible. This is not a normal ping, guys. This is like a Ansible way of pinging. This is not a normal ping. This is Ansible ping. It will try to SSH and test the connectivity. Now, I just provided the server details in the host inventory. Will it able to SSH, guys? What is required for SSH? Is just IP is sufficient? Does it require port? Not required, right? The default port SSH. The default port of SSH is 22. Now, let me try this way. And also, if you see, it is programmatically trying to SSH. Whenever we are trying to SSH or SCP, first, do we need to trust this? Do we need to accept this one, yes or no? Like whenever you are SSHing for the first time, we are going to get this warning, right? Now, since I'm using Ansible, I don't want any human intervention. I don't want this to be prompted. I don't want this to be prompted. I don't want to say yes or no. I want to disable this host key checking. I want to disable this host key checking because I'm executing some Ansible commands programmatically. Let's assume I'm trying to execute Ansible commands in the Jenkins pipeline. So if I get this kind of a prompt, will it halt your playbook execution unless until you provide the input? So I don't want this prompt. I don't want host key checking. I can disable that in the ansible.cfg file. So let me press Ctrl C. I don't want this prompt. I press the Ctrl C. Now you have a one more file, CFG file. You have a CFG file in the Ansible configuration settings. So in this file, let me search escape / search with this one host key checking. So here I will make it false. I will uncomment this one. I'll make it false. So it is already false. I uncommented. Now I am disabling the host key checking. Even though we are connecting to those machines, Ansible is connecting to those machines for the first time. Since I have disabled the host key checking, now will I get this prompt? Will it verify that host key? Since I have disabled host key checking? No. Right? Now I am trying to just test the connectivity. Now, do you see, is it able to connect successfully? In the background, it is trying to SSH to this machine. It is trying to SSH to this machine. Why only two machines? I have one more server also in my AWS. Why only two machines? Why only 2 machines? Because did I made an entry of this server in my host inventory? Did I have this server details in my host inventory? No. So I have only these 2 servers in the host inventory. Now it is trying to SSH programmatically. Why it is not able to SSH? I just have a server name, the server IP. And if you see, as a which user it is trying to connect to this machine in the background, and these machines as a which user? Ansible user. Why? Where did I mention Ansible as a username? I am nowhere I have mentioned to connect the machines as an Ansible user. Why it is using Ansible by default? Because as a which user I am executing Ansible commands in this machine. As a which user I am executing Ansible commands in this machine. As a which user? Ansible user. But as of now, do I have an Ansible user in these 2 machines? As of now, do we have an Ansible user in these 2 machines? No. And again, as I told, is it mandatory to have an Ansible user in those 2 machines? Or can I connect with whatever user I want to connect? I can connect with whatever user I want to connect. So again, I will make the necessary changes. I'll make the necessary changes. Guys, without SSH, without proper connectivity, does Ansible will be able to install the configurations? What is the prerequisite to connect, install the configuration for Ansible? It should be able to SSH. It should be able to connect, right? So as of now, I'm just testing the connectivity. Is it able to connect as of now to these machines? No. Again, I'm making the changes in the host inventory. Here, I can mention Ansible underscore user. Whatever user. As of now, do I have a user, this EC2 user in these 2 machines? Along with IP address, I'm mentioning the username. Now, do we have a EC2 user in this machine? This machine? But is username is only sufficient? Now, again, I am testing. Now it is trying to connect as a EC2 user, but why it is not able to connect? Is username is only sufficient? Now it is trying as a EC2 user, but still it is not able to SSH. Why? What is required? What are the possible ways of SSH, guys? What are the possible ways of SSH? You can use PEM, you can use password, you can use passwordless SSH keys, passwordless. But as of now, do I have a SSH key of this Ansible user in those 2 machines? Did I generated a SSH key in this machine? Did I have those SSH keys copied to this machine? No. And do I have a password for EC2 user? Do we have a password for EC2 user to give the password? No. So can I use the PEM file? Whatever PEM file we have for that server, whatever PEM file we have for that EC2 user? Yes. So what I will do, I will have that PEM file in this machine. I'll create a PEM file, whatever PEM file, what PEM file I am using for those 2 machines. This PEM file I have locally. So I am creating first that PEM file in this server. I have that PEM file in my local machine. I have that PEM file in my local machine. Let me copy that PEM file content. I have the PEM file in this Ansible machine now. Now in my host inventory again, in my host inventory again, in my host inventory, now again I will give this option, Ansible underscore private underscore key underscore file, that location. So since I am maintaining this file in the Ansible user home directory, since I am maintaining this file in the Ansible user home directory, I am giving something like this. Now, this time in this machine, in the Ansible machine, in the Ansible user home directory, currently I am in the Ansible user home directory. I have this PEM file. So I have given that path in the host inventory. Now this time, does Ansible will be able to connect using that PEM file, using that username? Why? This error is known already, this error. Why I am getting error even though I have a PEM file? It is saying, this error, right? The PEM file permissions are too wide. So I will change the permissions to the PEM file. Now, do you see, is it able to successfully SSH? This ping is nothing but in the background SSH. Now as a which user, it is connecting to these two machines as per our host inventory. As per our host inventory, as a which user it is connecting to these two machines? Ansible user. Where did I created an Ansible user? As a which user it is connecting, and it is using what way of connecting? PEM, right? Now since it is able to SSH, can I do the configurations whatever I want to do? Suppose if I want to create a user, or if I want to install some software, can I do that using Ansible now? We can do that. That will continue tomorrow, guys. That we will continue tomorrow. So there is a detailed video. There is a detailed video in our YouTube channel, right? How to set up Ansible. Windows machines also will have a usernames and password. Windows machines also will have a usernames and password. You need to have that Windows username password defined in the host inventory. Guys, in detail, there is a video in our YouTube channel, installing Ansible setup. So somewhere here, Ansible installation. Okay. Hello, so everyone. Go through this video. Welcome to Mithun Tech. This video already explains how to install Ansible. Whatever I have done today in detail, there is a video. So try to set up Ansible before coming to tomorrow's class. Tomorrow we will start with actual Ansible. Today we have just discussed about what is Ansible, how it works, and we have just installed Ansible. So try to go through this video. Tomorrow we'll continue with the actual Ansible. Tomorrow we are going to start commands, then we are going to start playbooks. Right? Kubernetes running nodes is already shared, right? There is no running nodes for Helm. There is no running nodes for Helm. Helm has a detailed document, and Prometheus Grafana also has a detailed document. So whatever running nodes I have shared last time, that is the final running nodes. Because Helm, this RBAC, there is a detailed notes, detailed document, which I have already shared. Thank you, guys. I'll stop the session for today. We'll continue tomorrow with actual Ansible. But I want everyone to set up Ansible before coming to tomorrow's class. Thank you.